whenever.
Live animals are imprisoned and forced to undergo any scientific experiment or test that is likely to cause them pain, suffering, distress, or lasting harm. Anesthesia or pain relief are not used, and after these tests are done, these animals are killed. And this happens every single day. Today I'm going to talk about how animal testing is unnecessary. We're going to go over the background and the history of when animal testing started. Then we're going to go over the reasons it's unnecessary. And then we're going to go on and talk about the continuation of animal testing. And then to end, we're going to talk about a few alternatives to animal testing. So to start, animal testing began in 1860. The most common animals used are mice, fish, rats, rabbits, guinea pigs, hamsters, farm animals, birds, non-human primates, and even cats and dogs. According to the New York Times in their article, Saving the Animals, a New Way to Test Products, estimates that tens of millions of animals are killed or maimed each year in search of the safety and effectiveness of new drugs, agricultural chemicals, and consumer products. And that's like a lot of animals, because that's tens of thousands. Next, we're going to talk about the reasons it's unnecessary. So animal testing is an outdated method. According to the Scientist magazine, this is something that would have helped us when it began in 1860, because we had no technology. We had just, let's test it on this animal, and if that doesn't go through, it probably won't help a human. So although we have had like medical breakthroughs through animal testing, considering that these tests go on every single day around the world, and there's probably been about, let's say, 100 medical breakthroughs from 1860 to now, the comparison just isn't really worth it. So the Scientist magazine goes on and says, although animal testing may have had some breakthroughs in the past, 9 out of every 10 candidates for medical medicines that appear safe and effective in animals study fails when given to humans. So 9 out of every 10. And this was a research done, by the Scientist magazine. Next, we are going to talk about another reason it's unnecessary, and that's how we have a lot more technology and resources, and it continues because it's a default method. So animal testing continues because it's something that scientists have used for such a long time that they rely on it. And most companies that promote animal testing usually are in a position of financial gain. And researchers believe by testing on animals that they're saving human lives. And when consumers see a product that's been tested on animals, they either have one of two reactions. One, oh my God, this is so sad, this shouldn't be happening, animal testing is wrong. Or two, they have reassurance that this has been tested on animals, so they assume that it's safe for them. When that's not always the case, because as we heard earlier, 9 out of every 10 fail. So that's something to take into consideration. And we are going to talk next about a few alternatives to animal testing. According to Time magazine, human-based clinical research will be very effective, and 25% of human-based DNA generic research, which they use the tissue in our skin from our eyes or our fingers, so it's not even like we're risking our lives, it's just parts of our body are being used. Those are 25% more effective, and it actually saves money because they don't have to keep these animals alive. Although a test doesn't end that day, they're going to have to keep that animal using it until the test is done. So you save money, you save time, and we're just using things that you can just prick some blood or some eye tissue. Another one is autopsy research, and obviously these are humans who are already passed away. And biopsy research, which would help just eliminate using animals as well. And there's also case studies, so you can go trial and error method. And these are results that have been proven to be very effective through Time magazine, Human Society International Organization, and the Scientist magazine. In all three of these sources, they go over these examples on how animal testing will be really beneficial and will save us money and will help not endanger animals and hurt them. So Traditionally, scientists use animal testing as a default method, but we are a much more advanced species, and we are now more aware of different ways to get results, even better results for consumer products and medicines. That animal testing would be the next best step. And to test on other living things and to hurt them when it's not even worth it is not just sad, but it's also just a waste of time. So that's why animal testing is unnecessary.
All right, well, I like the dramatic visualization at the beginning as kind of an attention device, and you identify your topic, although you do the thing that we were just talking about. Instead of making a declarative statement, you're going to talk to us today about how this is. I'm going, that's an informative speech. Your argument is, this is. So let's get rid of the question term there and turn it into a declarative statement. And we run into the same problem with a lot of the secondary claims also. They're not really claims. They are labels and signposts for information, but they are not making an inference, and you need to make an inference. So your inference is really straightforward. Animal testing is unnecessary. That's your first claim. Second, that the tests that we do on animals fail to produce a beneficial outcome or result. Second, we have effective alternatives to using animals that don't require us to use animals anymore. And those, I think, are the points that you want to have, and say them as declarative sentences and make the argument, as opposed to kind of just let me present some information about this subject so that we know what your inferences are. I mean, we can figure it out a little bit. I mean, it's not as if it's in doubt as to what you're trying to say, but you want to be as efficient and clear as you can be, and I think that's kind of been a consistent problem with a lot of the speakers today. The idea that animal testing's outdated, I think that's a good declarative statement, but the reason that it's outdated is not really explained until you talk about those alternatives at the end, and even then, I'm not exactly sure that you've shown that the genetic research that we're doing, the use of autopsies or biopsies, the case studies would get us the same kind of information that we're getting. And I think that's the thing that you need to show. You kind of go off on a couple of tangents earlier about it's being, it's their default position, they're doing it for financial gain. For example, on the issue of financial gain, let's suppose that we have a product that human beings are supposed to use, and there's a potential danger to it. If you didn't discover that danger ahead of time and just put the product out, obviously there would be a threat to your potential financial gains, because you'd get your tail end suit off, you'd go out of business. So the question is there a potential gain? What is the potential gain? You make it sound like using animals gives them some financial inducement there, as opposed to it's the idea of having the safest product. You want to tell us that we can have these products that are safe without using animals to test on. That's the way the argument needs to be phrased, as opposed to kind of this backwards sort of claim that makes it sound like somebody out there is just an idiot and they don't see what's obvious right in front of them. The statistic that you present that says 9 out of 10 of these medications are new chemical entities that get introduced later prove ineffective in human research, despite their promise there. I think that's a good piece of information that's useful. I'm not exactly sure that means that it's useless, but it does suggest that a lot of animal research only indicates promise, but it doesn't fulfill in human research. there's an explanation here that says testing goes through a series of steps, and they start with the preliminary chemical stuff, and then they do the animal tests, and then they do it on humans. So the question is, at what point should we be bailing out on this? And if it was something that was really effective, if we bailed out on it, that would be a problem. But it's the stuff that's ineffective that we shouldn't care that much about. And I think maybe if you had some examples of the medications, how many various painkillers do we need to have, for instance, if they've tested something on a painkiller, and we already have 600 painkillers, and here's a new painkiller that they've come up with, and they do all this animal testing and it turns out it doesn't work, then we haven't lost anything. The question is, are they testing on things that we don't have a lot of, and we need information? I think that's where there's a little bit of underdevelopment on this argument. The source citations, you're giving us publications names. I heard Time Magazine and I heard The Scientist Magazine. My guess is that The Scientist Magazine, if it is a publication that is scientific in nature, all of those articles are going to be attributed to somebody authoritative, and you should be citing them. And I got the impression that I'm getting a lot of paraphrasing instead of direct quotes, and you want to have the direct quotes. That's going to be much more effective at building your argument.
I just didn't want it to read off.
I understand, but sometimes, especially when you're talking about something technical, a direct quote. For instance, you get this 25% statistic that you're presenting. I'm not exactly sure I understand the 25% statistic, and I'll bet that if you had the direct quote, it would be clearer. So it's just, I think you need to be consistent about those kinds of things, especially when you're using data. All right.